And I've heard that story again and again, from you and these people and other really successful entrepreneurs, which is like most people will respect what you do if you're true to it, right?
Well, because I think people at their core want to see that in business. And what we typically see is the imbalance of people just throwing everything they are into business. And then we get this misconception that if we want to succeed, we have to lose everything we are and throw it into business. And while someone might be really successful in business, it's also been said that some people are so poor, all they have is money.
All right, we're rolling. Thanks so much for being here, Amanda. Welcome to the Thinking Project.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, heck yeah. Okay, so let's dive right in. You're the owner of Momentum Technology. You've done quite a few things over your career. Mainly, though, Amanda, what is it like owning a tech company in this environment today? Kind of like an app, you know what I mean? With everything, all the craziness going on in the world, especially in tech, around tech. Well, we're here in Salt Lake City. I'm here in Salt Lake City, and tech is just, it ebbs and flows. How has that been for you? How is the tech company rolling right now?
Yeah, things are great. But I think like most companies in 2023, they have had to roll with the punches. And there have been things that, when everyone was projecting out what their year would look like in January or maybe November of last year, they did not anticipate inflation and different things happening with AI and all of these things that just have taken place in 2023. So it's been an exciting year. It definitely is. It's a year that has kept us on our toes, but we've grown and hired, and I'm very, very thankful and blessed that we've not had to lay anyone off, which is a sad thing that's been happening a lot in tech this year. I think 250,000 people at least have been laid off just in 2023, just in the tech sector. So it's definitely come at a lot of companies.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned AI. Do you guys implement AI into your software and technology right now?
We don't currently, but it is conversations that we're having. Okay. My personal belief and opinion with AI is that
let's go.
You probably have seen it on my LinkedIn too, but I think AI is really exciting, and it's something that's worth exploring to supplement features, supplement people's day-to-day, not to replace people. And I think that's been the really sad part, that a lot of businesses have brought AI in to replace people's jobs. And, that happens with technology, like obviously with many different technologies, people's jobs have been replaced. But my hope is that with AI, we find really creative ways to supplement people's lives, make them better, easier, more productive, not replace roles.
Yeah, not replace. Well, I don't know if AI is to the point where it can replace too much things. I mean, I think it certainly has the potential to get there, but like I'm in the sales world, right? And so a lot of people are like, sales development reps, for example, the cold outreach and stuff like that, or like inbound. They're like, dude, those guys are done. And I'm just like, maybe in like 20 years, but not anytime soon. We just don't have it yet, right? Like it's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, I think a lot of the sales outreach emails that we get are done by AI, but I don't think they're really that good. So,
no,
yeah, I agree. The empathetic piece, I think AI is still missing, and that's where you need the human element, thankfully.
And the creative piece. I think AI, like this is how I've always used AI with like writing and stuff, is like it gets me like 90% of the way. And then I need to finish it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't get me across the finish line, but it kind of takes some of the minutia out, which I think is a good, to your point, right? Which I think is a good use case for AI. To be like, hey, how can it make our jobs easier? Like, how can I, supplement this versus like totally replacing it? But
blog posts, those kinds of things. I think you can get a lot of information quickly in one place and then have a human go in, and instead of spending 2 hours drafting something, they're spending 15, 20 minutes just editing and honing it in for what they need.
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about marketing for tech companies. We'll get into just what you do in just a minute, but a big piece of this podcast is like business owners listen to it, and a lot of people in tech will listen to it. And that's something right now in 2023 that's on everybody's, roadmap or to-do board in their war room, right? It's like, how do we market this? How do we get more leads? And I'm curious, as much as you can, right? How are you guys tackling the lead generation marketing piece in your company right now?
Well, so for us, we're predominantly B2C. So we're very much so consumer focused with our mobile apps. And so the nice part about being a mobile app is that you've got a lot of automatic exposure being in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. That certainly helps. And then we utilize a lot of digital advertising. So Google AdWords is predominantly where we'll market our products. Apple search ads, since again, we're a mobile app.
You can pay for Apple search ads?
Yep. Yeah.
I guess I've seen promoted or sponsored or whatever on there.
And for anyone who's listening who's got a mobile app on the App Store, they actually recently expanded their offerings. So now you can be in more than just the typical sponsored placement, which is pretty cool. So you can, I think, pay to get placed on the homepage and a variety of other areas. So they've also increased the potential of exposure for mobile apps in their App Store.
Okay. Dude, I feel like isn't that wild? It's like, yeah, you can get it on our homepage. Like, I wonder how much that would cost you to get on Apple's homepage.
Well, if you go to your homepage, you'll see just like these little sponsored, like when you're just kind of scrolling through the different categories and to see what's new. It's not Apple App of the Day, which is much harder to do. That's not really a paid opportunity.
Sure.
But
yeah, that makes sense. No, and that's good to know, like, because if you're B2C, I mean, that's pretty much what you got, right? Which is like kind of that organic or paid. Now, Momentum Technology, tell us what you do and kind of how you got here, like to this opportunity.
Sure. Yeah. So Momentum Technology is a company that's focused on helping consumers protect their privacy when it comes to calling and texting. So as a real world example, in 2020, millions of Americans and really the world had to work from home overnight with very little notice. And so many people started working from home and calling from their cell phones instead of an office line, thus removing this layer of protection and privacy and work-life balance. And so we have 3 mobile apps, Spoof Card, Privacy Text, and our brand new mobile app coming out very soon, Call from Work, which all of these mobile applications allow individuals to verify a phone number that they own and operate for Spoof Card or Call from Work. They can verify, let's say, an office line, and then they can use that as their caller ID from their cell phone. So instead of my personal phone number showing up, if I were to call you, Dalton, I could show my office line. So I can take that number anywhere. You can verify it instantly. It's literally within like 10 seconds. You can verify that phone number. You don't have to port it and go through all the complications of changing providers that are hosting it. So we make it really simple and easy for people to call from a secondary number and have everything connected to just one device instead of needing multiple phones.
Yeah. And that is so nice. Like, I think there's an application for like business owners and employees, but like we were talking about it, when we talked before this podcast, I think there's a huge application for like salespeople. Especially like outside salespeople or like car salespeople. That's where I started. Like car salespeople call from their personal lines all the time. And it's just like so frustrating because, there's got to be some degrees of separation. I feel like you want to give your customers the best service that you can, but that doesn't mean picking up a call like when you're at your son's birthday party or something like that. Right.
Like, yeah. And that's something at Momentum, we don't just preach it. We also live by it. And so we work really hard at honoring our team's paid time off, time after hours. And so it helps that we do that in the company because then it helps us be even more passionate about helping other people have that work-life balance. And like you said, be able to be focused at their son's birthday party or maybe a baseball game and not be getting interrupted by work calls after hours. Like it is important to have that balance.
Yeah. Well, and then offering something like that to help people do that I think is really special. And now you have a really interesting story. So we talked a little bit about this as much as you're comfortable sharing,
sure. Yeah.
But you've been with Momentum Technology longer than you've been the owner. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's slightly different than that. So okay, I actually founded Momentum Technology, but our flagship mobile app, SpoofCard, was owned by previous individuals. It was started back in 2005. And it has since had close to 7 million people use the service. I started as a college intern. I won't tell you what year because I know that's my age, but I started as a college intern working for the previous owners of SpoofCard. Was hired from that internship and worked my way up through entry-level, customer support to director of customer success, and then eventually to product manager of SpoofCard over about an 8-year period. And then in 2018, I had the opportunity of a lifetime to actually acquire the product, start Momentum Technology. I had a team of people from the previous company that came with me as part of the acquisition. And it has just been, like I said, opportunity of a lifetime. Intern to CEO and founder. I think I was 27 at the time. Now you can figure out how old I am, which is fine. But,
no, that's so cool. Holy cow.
Yeah, definitely not your typical story. And I think for me, what was so exciting about it was it's not your typical entrepreneurial journey where you start from the ground up. We had a product that, like I said, had already had millions of customers, had the revenue of a product that had been, I think it was maybe 15, 16 years old at the time. So now you have all of that, but then the benefit of a startup, in quotes, of a small team of people, everyone knows each other. There's that synergy and that excitement of building something great. And since then, we've doubled in personnel. We are now on our third mobile app. We've got B2B services. Companies mitigate risk and do fraud prevention when it comes to telecom. So it's just been an awesome journey.
Yeah. Entrepreneur by acquisition.
Yes.
That's how you do it. I think that's a great way to do it, though. Like a lot of people don't realize that option's available.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent point because not everyone is an inventor. And I think we have this idea that everyone's got to be, and I love her, but not everyone is a Sarah Blakely, where you have this great idea, you create something, and create $1 billion company out of it. You've got people who build homes and you've got people who buy them and flip them and renovate them, make them better, and then sell them for twice the price. So there's definitely, like you said, both options in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And I dove into that a little bit because not everybody's like, well, an inventor or anything like that. But a lot of people also aren't like, they're just not built for that. That startup thing, which is fine, by the way. I never got kind of like the hustle culture, which is like build something and grind for 10 hours a day. Like you could have the opportunity to go like be a linchpin in something and then kind of take it and run after it's been established because you know how to operate it once it's here. And, I think we did narrow entrepreneurship too much, or like side gigs too much to where like people aren't thinking outside or like willing to do certain things because it doesn't fit into this mold that they do. And for you, we talked about it before this, but just for the sake of the podcast, what made you go like, yeah, I think I can do that? Or like, it's just kind of a wild thought, right? Like for the reasons that I just talked about, right? Like not many people would be like, I wonder if they let me buy this thing and like run with it. Or I don't even know if that's what you thought, but what was going through your head, like personally when you were faced with that crossroad?
Well, so the hysterical thing is that my dad has owned his own tech company for 40 plus years. But he was a solopreneur, I think is how it's pronounced. Sure. But he was the product. And so I watched that over the years of him training and teaching and being the guy that's going to all of these places and fixing all of the problems and thinking, I never want to own my own business. I never want to be an entrepreneur. It's so much work. Okay. You know, it all stops with him. And so when this happened, I didn't even go after it. The crazy thing, it's funny, I don't share this part of the story too often, but I will today. So in January 2018, you know, I had been at the company for almost 8 years, the last company, and was starting to feel this question of like, have I settled? I've been here for 8 years. I saw friends moving to cool new cities and new jobs. And I almost wondered, like, have I just gotten comfortable and I've just stayed put when maybe there's more somewhere else? So I'd already started feeling that, but I didn't know what that next thing looked like. And I am a person of faith, so I always pray and ask God for wisdom before I do something. And that day, I just remember getting this sense of things will look very different by the end of the year than they do now. That was just kind of what I you know, felt internally, if I can articulate that well. And I just knew that it was God's way of saying, stay put, like just bloom where you're planted. And then by the summer of that year, the owners actually approached me and asked if this was something I would be interested in. I didn't even have to go after it. So once that opportunity presented itself, I told them I needed the weekend just, you know, to think about it, pray about it, talk to my family, because I knew this was going to be a big time investment. And my family and I are very close. So I needed to know they'd be on board with the fact that there'd be less time for family, because I'd initially be investing a lot more time into the business.
Yeah.
And once all of that checked out, I said, all right, let's do this. And
that's wild.
It's not always been easy, you know, lots of highs and lows in the journey, but it's been a great path and great journey.
Yeah. Now, I don't mean to pry too much, and you don't have to give me all the details, but my finance brain is like, how did they do the deal? Did they just, I mean, was it like an equity deal, all equity, all stock, or was it a little bit of cash up front plus equity, or like how was that?
Yeah. So I typically don't go too far into those details.
Yeah. And that's fine.
What I'll share is that eventually what ended up happening was the conventional SBA loan. Which worked out great. It, you know, the deal in and of itself, for SBA took about a year, which
SBA loans are difficult to get.
It took a long time. And my broker was phenomenal. He did not give up on it, but you know how it goes. Lots of interviews with banks and sharing your entire life story and life savings with them.
And like they want your firstborn child if it goes wrong.
Yeah, almost. Basically, yeah.
I worked with SBA loans for a little bit, and they're gnarly. They're pretty nuts.
The crazy thing, though, is you know, I've had my broker's phenomenal, so you know we still catch up every so often. And the wild thing is that he has said that now, if this deal were to happen, the bank situation has changed so much over the last few years that the banks probably wouldn't have gone for the deal. But the climate, you know, everything was just so perfect at that time that it worked out. And I always just laugh and go, you know, God's timing is perfect.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. Is that kind of validating for you as a person of faith? Like I'm same here. And to me, that would just be like, man, God knew exactly what he was doing.
100%. And he always does. But sometimes I like to say it's almost like a tapestry, right? And I feel like sometimes we're looking at the back of the tapestry. So we don't really see the whole picture. We just see all the threads and we don't quite get it. And then God kind of turns it around and goes, this is what I've been creating. And it all comes together.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah. I also, go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also like to think of it as that. You remember that story of like the three blind men go and like touch an elephant and they all touch a different piece of it.
Yes.
Right. And they're like, no, it's all this. And then it comes really clear, like what it is. I feel like that's how it's been in my life, where I'm like, nah, hey, you said it was here, but I'm not getting that. And then, yeah, you just kind of stay the course, and you just, you know, trust whatever you got to do. And it works out. I enjoy that. That's a really cool story.
Thank you.
And I was going to ask you, cause this is another wild piece. Yeah. Especially for like millennials, you were there almost 8 years. And now you said it towards the end, you were getting the itch to like move on, but 8 years is still a lot. It's a long time. Like, was that your plan? Was your plan to just find somewhere and grow as long as you could, or I mean, what motivated you to stay?
Yeah. That's an excellent question. It's funny. I've done a number of podcasts and have shared this story. I think you're the first person to ask that question, which is an excellent question.
Right on.
So bravo for thinking outside of the box.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the funny thing is that when I went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I figured, well, let me just do a degree in business. I can use that anywhere. And when I transferred from my community college to my 4-year, the degree was business and tech. That was the only thing they offered kind of within the same scope, oddly enough. So my degree is in what I'm doing, which is rare. But when I started at the company, I loved the company. It was just great energy. I loved the people I was working with. I felt very quickly that my colleagues were my friends, and we were building some really awesome things together. They came out with multiple products during my tenure there. So I got to watch the company grow from, 10 people when I started to, I think, almost 70 when I left, and started Momentum. So for me, I'm a very loyal person. So when I start something, I want to see it through. So the goal wasn't to, jump ship every couple years for a new role or higher salary. And they treated me very fairly, promotions and those types of things. So I think it kept my interest long-term.
Okay. I like that. Again, kind of like you have such a very unique story, because when I get people on here, it's entrepreneurs who have bounced around. They had like a million ideas and then went, right. And especially like women in business. I've had quite a few women in business entrepreneurs on here who are phenomenal. And, especially here in Utah, where we have, it's a very different scope, for lack of a better term, for like women in business. So to hear like you not only like found a company that you loved, but that like loved you and kind of helped you grow, especially, I mean, like that's not every woman's experience, right?
Yeah, no, I recognize I'm very fortunate that I had, just really good bosses who, and again, I think part of it was that because it was more of that startup, we were a small team when I began.
So they kind of had to like keep people close to the chest. Yeah.
Well, it's just easier to get to know people. And for me, I've always been a relationally driven person. So, if you have someone listening to this podcast who currently works for someone, this would be my like golden nugget for them. But, I feel like the best business is based on relationships. It's based on building that rapport with somebody and caring about them long before you need anything from them. And I think a lot of times employees view their work as, I'm doing the boss a favor. I'm here and I'm here just to collect a paycheck. But when a boss feels like, oh, my team actually cares about how I'm doing, or they ask, how are the wife and kids, or, just different questions that actually show they care about that person's life. I think it means a lot. And so I always had a really good relationship with my managers, the owners of the company, just really the different people I worked with as a whole, because that was pretty important to me.
Yeah. You know what? I like that what you said there. And what I got from that was like empathy goes both ways. Like if your boss feels like you care. And I think that that's one thing we've kind of gotten in this jaded world, right? Like where bosses expect their employees to be just like them, right? Like go-getters, whatever it takes. And some people aren't like that. And so and so those people go far to the other side, which would be like, I'm just show up, clock in, clock out, and I'm out, right? Like I do think that it's fair to point out that there should be a balance there, right? That bosses should acknowledge that not everybody's going to be like me. And that employees should be like, look, I am part of the team and I should pull my weight, right? Like, and whatever that balance looks like in that relationship, something that, you inspired me to think about just then. I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's fair. And whatever that looks like, I'm not sure.
Well, and even, so for us in 2021, I started a nonprofit called Momentum Impact. And it's essentially a branch of Momentum Technology, where we're committed to giving away a percentage of our profits to charities locally, nationwide, and globally. And in just the last couple of years, we've given over $250,000 to charities.
Oh,
and
wow.
So that's something that I feel like even if the team can't rally necessarily around, oh, I love the mobile app that the company's making, they can rally around every hour I spend here, every dollar I help the company make, a percentage of that is going right back out and helping change lives and make the world better. And so for us, it was really important to say, okay, maybe you don't eat, breathe, and sleep the products that we're making. You love your job, you love who you get to do it with, but the business owner is probably going to be the most passionate about what we're building.
Right.
But this notion of together, we can truly make the world better has been something that I feel like the team resonates with, knowing that we're helping rescue children from sex trafficking and helping feed people who are hungry and food insecure, and just all the different things we've been able to do.
Yeah.
Has just been a beautiful thing to see people rally around and get excited about.
Yeah, that is cool. And you said charities, so it's more than one, right?
Yeah.
Do your employees get to help pick who gets, like, what charity it is, or do you have a sort of like a vetting process internally?
Yeah, so we have any charity that we give to, typically we will go through Charity Navigator. They are really good at vetting charities and letting you know, like, how much goes to overhead and how much actually goes to the mission.
Yeah.
Because, we want to make sure that what we're giving to is actually going out and helping people who are less fortunate. So we do vet them, and we've given to a lot of different charities at this point.
Oh, that's cool. And was that when you founded Momentum Impact? That's kind of been a theme, right? So like a couple of years ago, I went to an event and they were talking about how consumers do business with people, with other businesses they share values with, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the quickest ways you can do that is if you're a business is like partner with a foundation, right? Another one that you can do, what you guys did, right, is start your own. But although starting a 501c3 is not a joke. Those are extremely difficult to get done. It's almost as bad as an SBA loan.
We must have had some serious favor, because from the time the paperwork was filed, I did use a law firm because, it's a first for me. So I wanted to do it right. But from the time the paperwork was filed, I think it was literally 3 months to getting approved, which is unheard of.
That's way quick.
Yeah. I mean, we were hearing anywhere from like 8 months to a year plus. So we just must have favor. But
I know. Sometimes like you get in these 501c3s, it takes longer than a year. You kind of have to like redo it.
Yeah.
And like, you don't start from scratch when you redo it, but you just kind of like refile to keep it going. So 3 months is very impressive. I mean, you hired a law firm, so probably didn't.
Hopefully they knew what they were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it probably wasn't cheap if they were getting it done in 3 months. Good Gandhi, right? Like, but that's cool though, because I think that a lot of people forget that. So starting that, what was your motivation for that?
Again, basically, as much as possible, everything I do, I go through the lens of my faith, and being a Christian, someone where the Bible and the Word of God is my authority. I look at what I do through that lens, how I treat people, how I give. And I am a big believer. I've seen it in my own life that if you want to be blessed generously, you also need to give generously. The law of sowing and reaping. Some people call it karma. But if you want orange fruit, you got to plant an orange tree. You can't
that's right.
Tree and expect oranges. So it's part of it is also showing the team that, hey, we're being generous and the company is growing and more customers are coming in. And there is this full circle of when you're generous, we're generous with the team, with how we treat them. So just really trying to instill that character trait of generosity, because I think that's something that's really missing in our culture. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of selfishness and self-absorbed and selfies. Everything is self-focused rather than how do I bless the world by who I am and what talents and gifts I can give it.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful one. I say that quite a bit too. It's like whatever you want to call it, right? Like, karma, the law of the harvest, however you want to put it. It's whatever you put back out comes back in, right? And I think it's good. Like I think that, we need more leaders who look through lenses like that, right? Who look through the lens of, gratitude, empathy, who look through the attitude of like, what more can I do? Which are all traits of believing in God and believing in Jesus Christ. And I think that's great. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a net positive all the time. Especially when you do it right. We get a lot of flack out here in Utah. It's kind of weird how like,
I was going to say in Utah, I'm surprised.
Which is weird, right? Which is wild. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation if you ever want to go down that road, but it's definitely a weird one that I wish more people would just kind of like, and almost sort of like have blinders on. Like, it doesn't really matter what's going on out here. Like, I need to stay true to this vision that I know I'm supposed to have. And I think that in my experience, people lose that because I feel like a lot of people want to look through here. They have good intentions, and then they just get distracted by whatever's going on out here that they lose focus of like what's right and what's right in front of them and like what's important, right?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, even beyond faith, when you think of what people give up to pursue entrepreneurship, they give up their family or their relationship with their kids, their spouse. Yeah. And it's like they lose what they have in pursuit of what they want. And having that balance of, investing in what you've already got. And, my pastor says anything obtained has to be maintained. Like, once you get it, it's not just there and done. We don't do that with anything else, car, plants,
right.
maintaining those things. Yeah. But when it comes to family and our kids, people often think that they don't have to keep investing in that for it to grow.
Right. And that's one of my favorite quotes, is chop wood, carry water, right? So the full quote goes, the full quote is before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, which is which is what what you get, you have to maintain. Right. Yep. Which I think is like, crazy lessons that like people just overlook. And I've done hundreds of these interviews literally. And one thing that I've learned and I found articulated very well in a certain school of philosophy was how you do one thing's how you do everything. So it's like if and in business, like how you succeed in one area is how you succeed in everything else. And I think people, when they get trapped in this hustle culture, think you have to go, like I was talking about earlier, right? I have to not see my family for a week, right? Like it's some kind of rite of passage, right? Which is bananas to me. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, we wear it. I call it the badge of busy.
That's a good way of putting it.
Wants to get together with you, and it's, I can't. I'm so busy. I'm booked a month out. It's like, well, but you're the one making your schedule. So really, we have to look inward or look in the mirror to see whose fault it is that we have no time.
Yeah. Isn't that so true? Like and I learned that a little too late in business, but the more that you like set your boundaries, the more that people will respect them. Like I've actually found that's more the case than the opposite. Yeah. Which is like, well, if you're not committed to this, then you're out. Like, I knew a really, really well-off entrepreneur. He's a CEO of a pretty famous company now. And when we were on the podcast, I asked about his non-negotiables. And one of them was that if it was important to his kids, it was important to him. So if he was like, if his daughter came up to him and said, hey, basketball is important to me, then that was it. Like, he was at every game. He was there. And I was like, well, how does that work now? I mean, dude, he was a CEO of a pretty large company. He got a pretty big board who, and when you answer to board and shareholders, you kind of do lose quite a bit, right? But no, he said, look, I can't do it. And he's like, if you want me, this is my rule. And if you don't, like, that's cool. I'll go somewhere else. And he said it took like maybe one meeting for him to be like, no, it ain't happening. And now they respect him, right? I mean, and so I've heard that story again and again, from you and these people and other really successful entrepreneurs, which is like, most people will respect what you do if you're true to it, right?
Well, because I think people at their core want to see that in business. And what we typically see is the imbalance of people just throwing everything they are into business. And then we get this misconception that if we want to succeed, we have to lose everything we are and throw it into business. And while someone might be really successful in business, it's also been said that some people are so poor, all they have is money. Because
right.
No relationships, no friends, no life. Life is meant to be lived. And if you love what you do, great. Like that, I think that's awesome and what everyone should be pursuing, like loving what they do, but not losing those they love in the process.
Yeah. Or like things that, you know what I mean? Or like the time, we're in a big push for mental health right now. Like, why would you sacrifice your mental health for this company that who knows what's going to happen to it in however long a time? And I'm of the camp that's like, if you take care of what, and it sounds like you are too, if you take care of what you have, it'll take care of you. Right. Like, and it's so true. Like, I think my family's been one of the biggest supporters, and it's because I don't give up family time. Like, when I'm with my family, it's 100% family time. So when I say, hey, I got to go to work, like, I don't get a lot of the dad guilt, right? Like, oh, you got to, I get some of that, like, oh, you got to go, but they know, like, when I come home, work's over.
Right.
For the most part. Right. And I try to do that as much as I can. I'm not perfect at it. But Lord willing, I go as much as I can, it stops. Right. So, but it's just kind of what you were talking about, right? You can't get trapped into this hustle culture thing.
Yeah. But I love what you said too, though. Who you are in one area is who you are in all of them. And I think so. We talk often about our core values at Momentum. And one of them is integrity. And it's like, a lot of times people think, oh, you can not have integrity in business, but you'll be a faithful spouse. It's like, well, if you're okay cutting corners and not living a lifestyle of integrity, eventually, maybe not immediately, but eventually it'll start to sneak its way into other areas of life where your finances, your marriage, just different areas where you suddenly start to feel like, oh, I don't have to do it with integrity. No one will find out. And so we try to make sure that everyone knows, hey, we do things with integrity. We don't cut corners. It might be harder, but it'll be worth it.
How do you go around? So I interviewed a really great entrepreneur again, who talked about culture. How do you, enforce is such a harsh term, but it's the only one that I can think of right now. So if you can correct me on a term, let me know. But like, enforce that core value. Yeah. Encourage it. Yeah. How do you like let it flourish? Whatever. Right.
Yeah. So that's been a work in progress over the last 5 years, but one was definitely, I had kind of my own personal core values, but realized I never articulated what those were up until last year. And so about a year ago, we had a company-wide meeting and we talked through, here are the core values of Momentum. Yeah, they've always been in my mind of how I've lived and the kind of culture that I want us to have. But, here they are on paper. And I defined them too, because a lot of people will say, oh, we're humble, we're people of integrity, we do things with excellence, but they don't add a subtitle as to like, what does that mean to the person saying these terms? So we did that. On the very simple side, we added them to our handbook, made sure everyone read through them and signed like, okay, yep, I understand these are the core values. But then twice a month, we do an all hands meeting where we will ensure like that's one of the slides. So we go through, here are our core values. But the biggest one is obviously leading by example. I can't expect the team to deliver something that I'm not doing myself. So it's a good heart check for me, holds me accountable to live those ways. But also one of the things that we talked about last year was that we have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to division, gossip, and strife, because those are three things that will bankrupt a company, not even financially, but just in morale and culture faster than anything else.
Yeah.
And we had a situation where someone was causing a lot of division and strife, and they were released from employment. And so I think after the team saw like, oh, she's not kidding. If this happens, like we're gone. It was sad that it had to happen at all. But once you know something, you have to address it. And so I think after that, we had a good culture as it was. But after that situation and them seeing, okay, this is a serious matter. yeah, everyone is abiding by them.
Well, no, I think, I heard the definition of workplace culture is, culture is defined as what you celebrate and what you tolerate. That's it. You know what I mean? And I was like, for as big of a buzzword as culture is, when I heard that from a very powerful CEO, I was like, that's it. It's not a buzzword anymore. Like, that's what culture is. Because the second that somebody sees like, oh, it's just like, when the cat's away, the mice play, right? Mm-hmm. That's what happens when you tolerate things that it shouldn't be tolerated. And yeah, I mean, and listen, I think that all of us make mistakes, and hopefully, the goal of anything like that is to learn from it. Like, I got a pretty hot head one time. I was early in my sales career, had a super hot head and they were like, they came back and did that to me. Right. Like, and you know what? I learned from it. I looked at myself and I was like, yeah, I took that one. That was my fault. I get that. And then I became a better person for it. And the people who had that conversation with me were actually really good friends. We've had that conversation before. So I don't ever think, I think you're doing more of an injustice by letting it slide than you would be by, enforcing whatever you need to, or right. However you're doing that. Right.
Well, because it also makes for a work environment that people don't enjoy coming to when they feel like that's happening behind their back, or that they can't, right. Yeah. So
you just hope that people learn from it and like, hey, look, I get it. Like, we're all human, but now's not the time, right? Because it's the balance of like, I want people to grow, but I'm also like that we're in a business, right? Like, I don't have to, that's why I've never been a term. I think it's coming more mainstream now, but I've never been a fan of the term like family. Like, we're more of like a team, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Previous place that I worked, everyone was family. And there are pros and cons to that. And here we don't really use the term employee. We say team member.
Yeah, we're teammates.
That's I rarely, if ever, say, oh, so-and-so's my employee, because I hate how that feels. Like, no, this is my team member. We're on the same team. We're working towards the same thing.
Yeah, we just play different. Yeah, we just play different positions. It's not a big deal.
We're all doing this thing together. I couldn't do what I do without them. So yeah,
that's a good one. I've heard people stop using that. Yeah. Like team members and teammates. And I think, I think everybody just kind of still, I never say someone works for me. I do the same thing. I go, this guy works with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just that subtle thing. Like, I don't know if it makes a huge deal yet with some of the people I work with, but, hopefully it does one day, because it's true. Like, I mean it. And I think that's the other thing, that kind of ties empathy into all this, is like, you got to mean it.
Yes.
You got to mean what you say and keep going, right? Integrity.
Right. Yeah. And being genuine. Like, people can spot fake from a mile away. Like, we live in a society where everything is filtered on, social media, and it's like people want real and authentic, and it might not be perfect. I'm certainly not the perfect CEO. I'm always learning. And sometimes some of my team gets a front row seat to me learning, but it inspires them to know, like, we're all on the journey together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a wonderful thing to, kind of take that journey with people together. Well, that's really cool. And I appreciate your time, Amanda. So before I let you go though, how can everybody find, I know you've got the 2, you've got 1 coming up. How can they follow you and be part of this?
Yeah, so momentumtech.io is our main website where they can see all of our products. Brand new one launching is callfromwork.com. It'll be available on iOS and Android. So yeah, definitely check that one out. I think it will change people's lives and make work-life balance so much easier for them. And then for me personally, I'm often on LinkedIn talking about leadership, business, what I'm learning in the journey. So you can find me, Amanda Pietracola. Good luck spelling that one.
Pietracola. It'll be down there.
LinkedIn there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Dalton. This was great. Great chatting with you.